There is a specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got last night, or how many hours you worked today, or how busy your schedule has been. It is a bone-deep, quiet, persistent ache that lives somewhere behind your ribs. It is the exhaustion of being you, or rather, the exhaustion of being the version of you that everyone else expects, relies on, and believes you to be. You know the feeling. It happens in the car on the drive home from a social event, when the silence finally hits and you feel like you have just finished running a marathon. Your jaw aches from smiling. Your shoulders are tight from holding yourself in a certain way. You replay the conversations in your head, checking for mistakes, wondering if you said the wrong thing, if you laughed too loudly, if you were too much or not enough. The engine hums, the streetlights pass, and somewhere beneath the noise of the review, there is a quiet, hollow feeling. A feeling like you have just spent the last 3 hours performing a role in a play that never ends. It happens when your phone lights up with a message from someone asking for a favor, and before you even read the full sentence, your chest tightens with the invisible weight of obligation. You already know you will say yes. You always say yes. Not because you want to, but because the thought of saying no sends a spike of anxiety through your body that feels disproportionate, almost dangerous, as though declining a simple request might cause the entire architecture of your relationships to collapse. It happens in those quiet, solitary moments, a Sunday morning perhaps, when the house is still and you have nowhere to be. And instead of feeling peaceful, you feel strangely empty, untethered, as though without someone to take care of, without a problem to solve, without a role to perform, you are not entirely sure who you are. You are so good at this. You are the easy one, the low-maintenance one, the one who doesn't need much, who never causes a fuss, who can handle anything. People praise you for this. They tell you how strong you are, how reliable, how mature. They love you for how well you fit into the spaces they leave for you. They have no idea how much energy it takes to make it look this effortless. But beneath that praise, beneath the smooth, competent surface of your life, there is a profound, silent depletion. Because keeping that surface smooth takes an astonishing amount of energy. It takes energy to scan every room you enter for emotional danger. It takes energy to monitor the micro-expressions on someone's face to determine whether they are upset with you. It takes energy to rehearse your words before you speak them, to edit your feelings before you feel them, to shrink your needs before you even acknowledge them. This is the exhaustion of the false self. It is the exhaustion of pretending, not in a malicious or deceptive way, but in a desperate, deeply ingrained way that began so early in your life that you cannot remember a time before it. You are not broken. You are not fundamentally flawed or uniquely damaged. You are just incredibly, understandably tired from carrying a personality that was built to survive, rather than a personality that was built to live. And the fact that you recognize this exhaustion, that something in you is saying, "I cannot keep doing this," that is not weakness. That is the first tremor of your true self, stirring beneath the rubble of decades of accommodation. That recognition alone takes more courage than most people will ever understand. To understand why you are so tired, we have to look back at how this version of you was constructed. This is not about blaming your parents or excavating the past just to dwell in it. It is about understanding the brilliant, tragic logic of a child's nervous system. When you were very small, before you had words, before you had opinions, before you had any concept of who you were, your physical and emotional survival depended entirely on the adults around you. As Dr. Gabor Mate often explains, human infants are uniquely vulnerable among mammals. We are born completely dependent, and so we are biologically wired for attachment. We need connection the way we need oxygen. It is not a preference. It is a survival imperative. But we also carry a second, equally vital drive: authenticity. The drive to be ourselves, to feel our feelings, to express our needs, to take up space in the world as we actually are. In a healthy environment, these two drives work together beautifully. A child cries and the caregiver comes. A child gets angry and the caregiver holds the boundary with warmth. A child expresses a need and the caregiver responds. The child learns, at the deepest level of their nervous system, I can be exactly who I am and I will still be loved. I can have needs and they will be met. My truth is not a threat to my safety. But for many of us, that is not what happened. Perhaps your caregivers were overwhelmed, working multiple jobs, managing their own depression, navigating a difficult marriage. Perhaps they were emotionally unavailable, not because they were cruel, but because they were carrying their own unprocessed pain. Perhaps the household was unpredictable, calm one moment, explosive the next, and you learned to read the atmospheric pressure of a room the way a sailor reads the sky. Perhaps there was no single dramatic event, no obvious trauma, just a persistent, low-grade absence of emotional attunement. 1,000 small moments where your feelings were dismissed, minimized, or simply not seen. In those environments, the child's nervous system makes a rapid, unconscious calculation. It goes something like this. When I express my true feelings, my anger, my sadness, my neediness, my fear, my caregivers withdraw, or become angry, or become even more overwhelmed. My authenticity is a threat to my attachment, and if I lose attachment, I lose everything. When a child is forced to choose between attachment and authenticity, attachment will win every single time. It has to. The child's survival depends on it. And so, the child begins to adapt, not consciously, not deliberately. The nervous system does it automatically, the way your hand pulls away from a hot stove before your brain has even registered the heat. You learn to read the emotional weather of the room before you even walked through the door. You learned which versions of you were acceptable and which were dangerous. If being quiet kept the peace, you became the quiet one. You learned to move through the house like a ghost, to close doors without making a sound, to eat without crunching, to cry without noise. If being the caretaker earned you praise and attention, you became the caretaker. You learned to make your mother tea when she was sad, to mediate between your parents when they argued, to put your younger sibling to bed when no one else remembered. You were 7 years old, and you were already managing a household's emotional climate. If being cheerful prevented your mother from crying, you became the cheerful one. You learned to perform happiness so convincingly that even you believed it was real. If having needs was a burden, you learned to need nothing. You stopped asking for help with homework. You stopped mentioning that your shoes were too small. You stopped crying when you were hurt, because you had learned that your pain made other people uncomfortable. If showing anger provoked punishment or withdrawal, you learned to swallow your anger so completely that you eventually forgot it was there at all. You became the child who never complained, the child who was no trouble, the child who could be left alone in a room for hours and never make a sound. And here is the part that breaks my heart. You were proud of this. You were proud of how little you needed. You were proud of how well you could manage. Because the adults around you were proud of you for it. They told you so. They said, "You're so mature for your age." They said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." They said, "You're the easy one." And you absorbed those words like sunlight because they were the closest thing to love that your environment could offer. The psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott called this the development of the false self. It is not a lie. It is not a character flaw. It is a protective shell, a brilliant psychological invention designed to shield the vulnerable true self from an environment that cannot hold it. You did not choose this. Your nervous system chose it for you, long before you had the language to understand what was happening. You traded your authenticity for safety. You traded your truth for connection, and at the time it was the wisest possible trade. It worked. It kept you safe. It got you through childhood. It probably earned you gold stars, good grades, and praise for being so mature for your age. Adults loved you because you were easy. Teachers loved you because you were no trouble. Friends loved you because you were always available, always accommodating, always willing to put their needs first. But here is what nobody told you then, and what you are only beginning to understand now. A child should never have to earn love by being easy. A child should never have to suppress their own needs to maintain a parent's emotional stability. A child should not have to be mature for their age. That is not maturity. That is a survival response. That is a tiny human being doing whatever it takes to stay connected to the people they depend on for survival. And the tragedy of the false self is that it does not know when the war is over. It does not know that you are no longer a dependent child in an unpredictable household. It continues to run the same survival programs in your adult life long after the original threat has passed. It continues to scan every room for danger. It continues to suppress your needs. It continues to perform, because it genuinely believes that if it stops, even for a moment, everything will fall apart. And this is why you are so exhausted. Think about the sheer cognitive and emotional load of that performance. Think about the energy it takes to smile when you are angry, to agree when you want to say no, to be the caretaker when you desperately need to be cared for. Think about the energy it takes to hold back tears in a meeting, to swallow a sharp reply, to pretend you are fine when your entire body is screaming that you are not. It is like holding a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while. You can even make it look easy. But eventually, your arms will ache, your muscles will tremble, and the ball will inevitably, violently burst to the surface. This exhaustion often masquerades as other things. It looks like burnout, but rest does not fix it. It looks like depression, but antidepressants only take the edge off. It looks like anxiety, but no amount of breathing exercises can calm a nervous system that is fundamentally exhausted from decades of hypervigilance. It looks like a sudden, inexplicable loss of interest in the things you used to love, hobbies abandoned, friendships neglected, passions quietly shelved. You might find yourself withdrawing from the world, canceling plans at the last minute, spending entire weekends in bed, not because you are lazy, but because the thought of putting the mask back on feels physically unbearable. You might find yourself snapping at the people closest to you, the ones who are safe enough to receive the anger you have been swallowing everywhere else. You might find yourself numbing out with food or alcohol or scrolling or shopping. Anything to avoid the quiet, aching emptiness that surfaces when the performance stops. You might judge yourself harshly for all of this. You might call yourself lazy or ungrateful or weak. You might compare yourself to others who seem to manage their lives with ease and wonder what is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. You are simply depleted. Your nervous system is exhausted from the constant, low-grade vigilance required to keep the false self intact. It is exhausted from the monumental, invisible effort of not being you. But the exhaustion is not the deepest wound. The deepest wound is the loneliness. Because when you live entirely from the false self, you can never truly be known. Even when you are surrounded by people who love you, there is a quiet, persistent sense of isolation, a glass wall between you and the world. You can see other people, you can hear them, you can even touch them. But there is always a barrier, and the barrier is the performance itself. You know deep down that they love the mask, not the face beneath it. They love the version of you that never complains, never needs anything, always has it together. And so, the very strategy you develop to secure connection, the suppression of your authenticity, ultimately guarantees your isolation. You are safe, but you are utterly alone inside that safety. You are surrounded by people, but you are unseen, and there is a grief in that. A grief so quiet and so old that you may not even recognize it as grief. It might show up as a lump in your throat when you watch a film where a parent truly sees their child. It might show up as an inexplicable sadness on your birthday, or at Christmas, or during any occasion when you are supposed to feel happy and connected. It might show up as a strange envy when you see friends who seem to move through the world with an ease and a lightness that feels foreign to you, as though they were given a manual for being human that you never received. This is the grief of the false self, because how do you grieve something you never had? How do you mourn the experience of being truly, fully known by another person when you have spent your entire life making sure that could never happen? This is the grief of the false self. It is the grief of realizing that you have been loved, yes, but loved for a performance, not for your truth. This is the turning point. This is the moment when the exhaustion becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. Because the exhaustion is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that the strategy is no longer working. It is your true self, knocking on the door from the inside saying, "I am still here. I have been here the whole time, and I am ready." Recognizing this requires a profound shift in perspective. Instead of judging the false self, instead of hating the parts of you that people please or fawn or suppress your needs, you must begin to see them for what they are: brilliant, desperate, loving adaptations. They are the parts of you that figured out how to survive in an environment that could not hold your truth. They are the parts of you that ensured you were fed, clothed, and protected. They are the parts of you that kept you connected to the people you needed most at a time when disconnection would have been catastrophic. They deserve your gratitude, not your contempt. As Carl Jung once wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." The false self does not dissolve through force or willpower. It dissolves through understanding, through compassion, through the slow, patient recognition that it was never the enemy, it was the protector. When you can look at your own survival strategies with tenderness, when you can say to that exhausted, performing part of yourself, "I see how hard you have worked to keep us safe, and I thank you, and I release you from this duty," something remarkable happens. The grip begins to loosen. The shame begins to dissolve. The nervous system, for perhaps the first time in your life, begins to exhale, because shame cannot survive in the presence of compassion. And compassion is the only force powerful enough to integrate the parts of ourselves we have spent a lifetime rejecting. This is the work of returning to the true self. And it is important to understand what this work actually looks like, because it is nothing like what the self-help industry often promises. It is not a sudden awakening. It is not a dramatic before and after transformation. It is not about becoming a completely different person overnight. It is a slow, quiet, dignifying process of reclamation. It begins with tiny, almost imperceptible choices. It begins with pausing for a fraction of a second before you automatically say yes to something you do not want to do. Just the pause. That is enough. It begins with noticing the tightness in your chest when someone asks for a favor, and allowing yourself to feel that tightness without immediately trying to fix it or override it. It begins with the radical act of telling the truth about how you feel, even if it is just to yourself, in the privacy of your own journal, in the silence of your own mind. It might look like saying, "I need to think about that," instead of immediately agreeing. It might look like leaving a party when you are tired, instead of staying until the end because you are afraid of what people will think. It might look like crying when you are sad, instead of retreating to the bathroom to compose yourself. It might look like admitting to one trusted person that you are not okay. These are not small things. For someone who has spent their entire life in the false self, each one of these choices is an act of extraordinary courage. Each one is a tiny revolution against decades of conditioning. Each one is a message to your nervous system that says, it is safe to be real now. It is safe to take up space. It is safe to have needs. As Pema Chodron teaches, the path of healing is not about escaping discomfort. It is about learning to stay. Staying with the anxiety that arises when you drop the mask. Staying with the guilt that floods in when you say no for the first time. Staying with the fear that if you are truly yourself, you might be rejected. Staying with the grief of all the years you spent hidden, and you might be rejected. That is the terrifying, honest reality of authenticity. When you stop performing, the people who only loved the performance may drift away. The relationships built entirely on your compliance will inevitably change. Some will deepen into something more real and nourishing than you ever imagined possible. Others will not survive the transition, and that loss is real, and it is painful, and it deserves to be grieved. But what you lose in those relationships, you gain in something far more profound. You gain yourself. You gain the quiet, steady hum of aliveness that comes from living in alignment with your own truth. You gain the deep, unshakable trust in your own capacity to navigate the world without having to pretend. You gain the energy, all that extraordinary energy, that was previously bound up in the performance. When you no longer have to hold the beach ball underwater, that energy becomes available for your actual life. It becomes available for joy, for creativity, for rest, for genuine connection, for the simple, radical pleasure of being exactly who you are. As Bell Hooks wrote, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. When you begin to show your true face to the world, you give others permission to show theirs. Your authenticity becomes an invitation. Your vulnerability becomes a bridge. The very thing you were taught to hide, your realness, your neediness, your imperfect, messy, beautiful humanity, becomes the thing that draws people closer, not further away. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You are a deeply intelligent, fiercely resilient human being who learned exactly what you needed to learn to survive a situation that was never your fault and never your responsibility to fix. But the survival phase is over now. The war has ended. You do not need to keep wearing the armor. Imagine for a moment a house that has been boarded up for a terrible storm. The windows are shuttered. The doors are locked and bolted. The furniture is covered in dust sheets. Every opening has been sealed against the wind and the rain and the chaos outside. The house did exactly what it needed to do. It withstood the storm. It kept everything inside safe. But the storm passed years ago. The sky is clear now. The sun is warm. Wildflowers have begun to grow around the foundation. Birds are singing in the trees that somehow survived. It is time to start taking the boards off the windows, one at a time, gently. There is no rush. It is time to unlock the doors and let the light pour in. It will be dusty inside. It will take time to clean, to rearrange the furniture, to air out the rooms that have been closed for so long. Some things will need to be repaired. Some things will need to be let go of entirely. But it is your home. It has always been your home. And you are allowed to live in it now. You are not behind. You are not broken. And you are not alone. You are simply exhausted from pretending. And you can rest now. Not the kind of rest that comes from collapsing at the end of another performance. The kind of rest that comes from finally, after all these years, putting the mask down and breathing with your own face. You can rest now. You can finally, truly rest.